Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. From time to time, I like to bring you content that helps you live better, that helps you reduce your stress, have more energy, and just live more fully and freely. So I've got an interview today with Dr. Rupachari. She is a licensed medical doctor who focuses on helping you get away from the mainstream medical merry-go-round. We're going to be talking about insulin resistance and how that could be the culprit when it comes to you feeling more stressed, more hungry, having more cravings, poor sleep, and all around just not feeling your best. So she's going to give us solutions on how we can overcome that insulin resistance. This is going to be a two-part interview. So let's dive in and enjoy part one with Dr. Chari. Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. And you probably know my guest. You've been asking for her, Dr. Rupa Chari. She is a licensed medical doctor, but she really focuses on functional medicine, which is basically getting to the root of your problems. I just need to let you know from the get-go that she helped so many people stand up against all of the illegal, unethical, ridiculous requirements that were sloshed all over us in the early days of what I call the cooties hogwash. So rest assured, she's one of us, and she is going to talk today about how we can feel better by learning about insulin, what it is, how we can balance it, and what insulin does in the body, and so much more. So Dr. Chari, welcome back.
Thank you, Peggy. It's great to be back.
Why don't you give our audience just a brief overview in terms of what you do? And I also want our friends to know that you have been so generous to offer a complimentary consultation for friends that are struggling. Maybe they don't know why they're not feeling well. So I want to mention that right from the get-go. But tell us what you do exactly.
Well, thank you, Peggy. So my name is Dr. Rupa Chari. I'm a medical doctor and I practice integrative and functional medicine. And as Peggy was saying, that is getting to the root cause of your underlying issues, combining nutrition, leading edge remedies, mind-body medicine, really finding out what is causing the symptoms you're experiencing and the medical conditions you may be having and reversing it. That's the key. My goal is, to prevent people from getting on medication, help them get off of it by addressing the root cause. And I focus a lot on women's health, and especially women over the 45 for helping them balance their hormones, lose weight, and reverse aging, and treat their underlying medical issues with a 100% natural approach.
That's what I love, Dr. Chari. We're all about the natural approach here. So many people in my audience, they are very skeptical of what we call big pharma, and they want to learn how they can feel better naturally. You know, what's been in the news, what I've been hearing a lot, and what's showing up on my YouTube suggested videos is all about insulin resistance. And as I understand it, that can make you feel tired, sluggish, make you anxious, irritable, make it difficult for you to lose weight, and so many other things. So why don't we just start out, and if you could let us know, like, what is insulin? Normally we hear about it related to diabetes, but what is exactly insulin resistance?
Definitely. And as you're saying, Peggy, this is such an important topic because one doctor estimated that over 50% of the population may be having some form of underlying insulin resistance. So this is such an important topic. So, and I always like to keep things simple because I like to think of visuals for understanding really complicated concepts. And so what I tell my patients is that think of insulin like a key. And think of your cells are like a little homes, and we have 500 trillion little homes in our bodies. So your cell is like a little home, and then the door is what they call the cell membrane, which is like the coat of the cell. So in your cells, in your little homes, there's a key, just like our key to the front door of our home. And insulin needs to get into that keyhole with ease and grace. But this is what happens. Because of the toxins we're exposed to in our environment, all of the processed foods, stress, a combination of so many different reasons, including of what ends up causing chronic inflammation or long-term inflammation, we can think of all of these chemicals and inflammation literally rusting the keyhole. So when the keyhole is rusted and that key is trying to get in, and let's say it's also grimied up a little bit, as it's rusty, it's grimy. So that insulin, which is the key, trying to get into that keyhole, which they call a receptor. We're going to call the keyhole the receptor. So, and in this case, we're talking about insulin. So as that insulin's trying to get in there, but it's all grimied up and rusty, it can't make a good fit. If it can't make a good fit, then insulin can't open the door. And if that door of your cell can't open, then sugar that's floating around in your bloodstream can't get into your cells. And if that sugar can't get into your cells literally starve because this is fuel for them too. And they use that sugar to then make energy with the little engines in your cell. So then if we're not getting sugar into our cells are starved, then we start feeling tired, and then all the different symptoms start popping up. So that's one of the keys, is that realizing that insulin is trying to get in, but it can't because it's a grimied up keyhole or grimied up receptor. So then the body says, oh my gosh, we've got too much sugar floating around in our cells. We need to get that sugar into the cells so it doesn't cause damage in our arteries and organs. So then the divine intelligence of the body says, okay, we need to make more insulin. Okay, pancreas, you need to make more keys. So your body's making more and more of those keys, but the keys are still trying to get into those keyholes, which are grimied up. And so then our insulin builds and builds and builds. And that's what is known. One of the reasons, we'll talk about a few key reasons, but that's one of the reasons that actually causes insulin resistance.
Well, that is so interesting. As I'm listening to that, and I'm thinking of the sugar in the blood not being able to get into the cells. And I know that I've experienced like hunger that I shouldn't have because I already ate, or maybe fatigue. And I'm wondering if that, you're probably going to reveal that shortly, but it seems like you could still be hungry even though you've had enough calories, but you're just not actually, the cells are just not getting that nourishment. So, before we go any further, why do we need insulin? What does that do? Is that actually the energy, or why is it so important?
Well, insulin is one of the most important hormones that we have. And, a lot is talked about how important it is for balancing blood sugar, which it is. And insulin is made by the pancreas, and your pancreas is right there in your abdomen, near your stomach and intestines. And it has several functions. It makes digestive enzymes on one hand, and other parts of the pancreas end up making the insulin. So, what happens also is when our pancreas keep having to make these keys, keep having to make a lot of these of the insulin, because the receptors are all grimied up, the little keyholes are all grimied up. After a period of time, then the pancreas starts wearing down too. And when the pancreas wears down and is not able to produce as much insulin, then what happens is, again, because of the insulin resistance, then our blood sugar starts spiking up. So this is what insulin does. It actually has several functions. In addition to with the insulin helping with the blood sugar management, it also manages our energy. So you can literally think of insulin like an energy manager. So when we eat food, the insulin is going to decide, okay, what should we do with this fuel? Should we store it? Should we burn it? Or should we use it to build? So the insulin will help determine that. And so it works in different ways in different organs with the same ultimate goal. So let's say for muscles, and this is why exercise and moving is so important. Just with exercise alone, that will make our cells more sensitive to the insulin. It helps to kind of clean out the keyhole so insulin can make a better fit in there, in that keyhole. So the exercise is critical. So this is what happens. It's going to say, okay, muscles, we need you to open up your locks here so that we can get the sugar inside so that you can get energy, so that we can generate more energy. That's why with the muscles, it's very, very important because insulin literally lets sugar into your muscle cells so that you have energy, which is why, again, why people can get different aches and pains and just feel fatigued when they're working out because that sugar is not getting into the cell.
That is amazing. That insulin resistance can be linked to the aches and pains.
Yes.
That's astonishing. I never knew that.
Yes, exactly. And because we're having all of this inflammation, which is then driving stress hormones to higher numbers, which then causes insulin to be at higher numbers, which I'll share more about too, but that, can affect us in so many ways. So insulin works on your muscles to help get sugar in there. It also works in your liver. And what it does is, so when we're eating, what should happen is the insulin goes into the cells of your liver and says, okay, liver, don't put out any more sugar. We've got enough sugar on board from what we're eating here, so we're good. But if those liver cells are resistant, if those holes are grimied up and insulin's trying to get in and it's not having anywhere to go and not opening up that door to get sugar and the information into the liver cell, the liver will end up putting out more sugar into the bloodstream instead of doing the exact opposite, which is storing it.
Wow.
So that's another reason why blood sugar issues and different symptoms can come about. And then your fat cells. Now, I know everyone has kind of a not loving relationship with fat, but I want everyone to know that literally the fat in our body is there for a divine purpose. And so insulin literally helps to store the calories as fat. And the reason it's doing that is to help give us energy when we need it, to kind of release the energy and the nutrients from the fat cells. But here's what happens. When our insulin is staying high for long periods of time, then the same thing happens. So for like either constant snacking or even stress, emotions can do this too, and that's really important to know. Then your body stays, because the insulin levels are high again, it stays in a fat storage mode instead of fat burning mode. And that's again because of the high levels of insulin. And then that's why people say, I'm doing all the right things, but I can't get rid of my belly fat. And this is, they get frustrated. I understand exactly how that feels. So that's the other thing, is that then we're not able to easily burn fat for energy. So it's very important for many organs, including also, in addition to our liver and our muscles and for storing fat, insulin is very important for our brain. So if we're having like brain fog, memory issues, forget why we're doing things, even can affect our mood,
Oh, yeah.
or even having cravings, that's because the cells in the brain are also getting that resistance. The little keyholes are grimied up. So insulin's knocking on the door, trying to make a good fit there. But again, the same thing happens. And so then the brain cells are literally starved of the sugar and they can't generate energy. And then what happens? We have brain fog, we have memory issues, we get sugar cravings, all of these different things that seem unrelated, but it's related to, again, insulin resistance. And that's why they're calling different brain conditions, like even like Alzheimer's, type 3
Mhm.
diabetes, because of the insulin resistance. So this insulin is very central to our metabolism and to, so many functions in our body.
Friends, stick with us because Dr. Chari always has steps to take, action steps and solutions. As you're saying those things, I'm going down my checklist: brain fog, check; cravings, check. Luckily, with your help and assistance, I've been able to get my insulin levels more balanced, my blood sugar more balanced. And it is unbelievable how much more energy, more clarity. And I don't have those spikes of energy like cortisol driven energy where it's sort of anxious energy. So everyone that's listening, I just want you to think about those times when you're driven by kind of nervous energy or stress energy, which probably is helpful maybe in short spurts here or there, but not for a sustained period of time. And that's when you have a crash. So, Dr. Chari, and I also I want everyone to know that there's going to be a part 2 to this insulin story, but we are going to hit all of the main things for you today. And I also need to remind everybody to go back and watch my previous interviews with Dr. Chari. Most recently, we spoke about cholesterol. And all of these functions of the body are interrelated. I didn't know until just now that the pancreas also creates digestive enzymes. I thought that was only in the gut. So I learned something new every time we are together. And I love your analogies and images and all. So, should we talk about new discoveries about insulin and insulin resistance and how that can help us?
Absolutely. And what I'm going to share with you, a lot of even practitioners are not aware of this because new research is always coming out. So we're living in exciting times. And so what I want everyone to know is everything begins at the cell level. And this is a key concept, is our cells make up our tissues make up our organs, and our organs make up all of the body systems, whether it's the cardiovascular system, the heart and the lungs and the kidney and the bladder and our brain and nervous system and our digestive system, lymphatic system, which is cleans out the cells and helps with our immune system. All the different systems in our body and all the different organs in our body, we have to go back to the beautiful cell. And we have at least 500 trillion cells. So that's why I call our cells our little homes, because they are what get nutrients. We need to get our nutrients into our cells. We need to create energy, and sugar is a big part of that, along with other vitamins and minerals and oxygen. And it's a very complex reaction to make that energy. So it's important, so important to get sugar in there. Otherwise, our cells are affected. And we also need that energy to not only get nutrients in our cells, but we need also to get waste, toxic waste out of our cells. So that's very important. So that's why it's so important to keep our cells clean, which we can do in so many different ways. And one thing I wanted to share is that as important as I was talking about the receptors, which are the keyholes, which can get grimied up and rusty, so the key insulin can't fit in. Well, here's what they also found out is that if we don't have a good balance of antioxidants and free radicals in our body, believe it or not, we do need some free radicals, but like Goldilocks, we need everything in balance. But if we don't have that in balance, and usually what's happening now because of processed foods, which are high fructose corn syrup and sugar and refined flours and all the chemicals that we talk about. And when we did the workshop on seed oils too, all
Yes.
of these things create so much inflammation in the body and so much chemical stress floating around in our bloodstream. Then what happens is the keys themselves, even though our beautiful pancreas is making the keys themselves, that insulin can get damaged. And not many people know that, oh my gosh, the actual keys can get damaged, and they do. And so you can think of it like the key is almost like split in half, like bent, or even sometimes broken into two pieces. So if that key then tries to get into that keyhole, it's not going to make a good fit. It's warped, it's broken in half, it's all bent up. So even let's say that keyhole was all nice and clean, the key itself may be damaged, and they call that chain splitting. So now we're realizing, okay, we need to get these keys nice and clean, and we need to keep our blood nice and clean so that our insulin is not damaged as well. That is really, really, really important. And so that will also help then with balancing our blood sugar. And then what they're also finding is because of, again, the amount of toxins we're being exposed to, and so there's physical toxins, and then of course they're emotional toxins. Stress itself can create a lot of chemical stresses in our body and can imbalance the ratio of antioxidants and the free radicals. So the free radicals then create more damage. There is too many toxins floating around here. We're going to slow down. We're going to protect our energy here and our reserves, and it won't shut down, but it will kind of slow down all the processes of the body, and it won't create so much energy, which can then lead us to feeling tired and leading to so many different symptoms as well.
So you have tips for us in order to do that. What are these tips that we can do to achieve that?
Absolutely, Peggy. Well, here's the exciting news is our body is always rebuilding and regenerating and wants to take us always to a state of optimal health. We are designed that way.
I love
So
that.
that's the beautiful part.
Yeah.
So you just need to create the right environment. And I am a person who likes slow and steady wins the race. And so the first step is in nourishing your cells. And that goes back to avoiding as much as possible processed foods. So when we say eat whole foods, I basically mean foods that don't have a label about this long, that we can't pronounce any of the words on it.
Right.
And
Ideally, they don't have a label, right? Like apples and chicken and
exactly.
avocados. And
Exactly. I was actually going to bring some fruit to show,
right.
fruits and vegetables don't have any labels. That's what we mean by whole foods. It's really getting back to the basics and really, honestly, Peggy, really looking at how did our ancestors cook and eat? How did your grandparents, what kind of oils did they use? What did they cook? Because, it's getting back to nature again. So that's going to be very important. So as far as fruits, berries are very good because they don't spike up the blood sugar as much. Blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. We always keep plenty of berries around, and organic, because otherwise non-organic produce of berries particularly is some of the highest contaminated with pesticides. So, and then leafy greens as much as possible. That's very important. And omega-3 fats. So all of these, veggies and colorful, wide variety of veggies and fruits and omega-3s, they help keep the coat of your cell, like the covering of your cell. If this is your cell, it's the outside part of your cell, which they call now the brain of the cell. The actual brain of your cell is right here because these are where all the keyholes are, where all the hormones attach to in those little receptors or keyholes. So that keeps, if the healthier the coat or the cell membrane is of your cell, the healthier your organs are going to be and your body's going to be. So nourish your cells and move daily. And if all of you remember only one thing today, it's this. And that is that after you eat, please try to walk even for 10 to 15 minutes at a relaxing pace. Ideally they say 3 times a day, but I'm being realistic, at least once a day, definitely after dinner. And if you can, while at work, after lunch. And here's what they found. And it's been published in really respectable, I should say, journals, of the importance. At UCLA, they did studies on this too, that within 60 to 90 minutes after eating, but ideally as close to after you eat your meal as possible, if you go for a 10 to 15-minute walk, what's going to happen is your cells in your muscles will become more sensitive to insulin, and that extra sugar from what you just ate can go into your muscles and create energy. And it even makes your cells more sensitive to insulin just by walking. Please walk after your meals. It's really important within, I would say, an hour after you eat at the most, to get the most benefit from that. That's important. And so yes, so walking is critical. So another way, again, to keep your insulin receptors nice and healthy is also just to hydrate. And as we were talking about before, Peggy, in stainless steel and glass, exactly. That's the
It's
key.
glass.
Oh, that's perfect, because that is the key. That will help flush the toxins out of our body and help to hydrate and get water into our cells as well. And then detoxify. In this day and age, it's not even an option. Our ancestors did that, every season, an intense cleanse, but we have to really detox on a regular basis now. And, make sure your bowels are working well, and also to eat really beautiful foods that nourish your liver, like cruciferous vegetables that we've mentioned before, the broccoli, the cabbage, the Brussels sprouts, the cauliflower, and cook them well. And it's important because they have sulfur containing compounds in them that really help your liver to detoxify. And that's really key because our livers are getting overworked with all the toxins that we're especially being exposed to in this day and age. And then managing stress. I can't emphasize that enough. Not talking about the emotional component is the physical is important, of course, and the emotional is always like the pink elephant in the room. And the managing the stress is so important because when we're under stress and our body's producing all these stress hormones and cortisol, When our cortisol levels are high, that will cause our insulin levels to go up and get higher and higher. And then what happens again is then that also leads to insulin resistance and causes our body to store fat, and then the whole cascade of other issues. So managing your stress with some relaxing breathing, the walking, my goodness, if you walk after dinner, this is what I found, Peggy. When I'm walking after dinner, it's just burning up those stress hormones, and my quality of sleep has never been better. So
Yes.
that's another quick and easy way, which is my last point in this part, is for sleep.
Yes.
And several things we can do to help us to sleep better. But one key thing is simply burning off those stress hormones, walking after dinner, maybe an hour before you sleep. Try to avoid, looking at the internet and everything that's going on, just to kind of relax your mind.
Friends, I just want to remind you that Dr. Chari has very graciously offered a complimentary phone call, a 15-minute consultation. And I'll have an email link for you in the description box. You can check that out. So she can talk to you about what's going on and point you in the right direction. And Dr. Chari, we spoke in one of our previous interviews about this brilliant Japanese scientist, and I was fascinated by some of his findings. And my understanding is he can shed some light or add to our understanding of insulin resistance as well.
Definitely, Peggy. Actually, I have the highest regard for him. His name is Dr. Takashi Kadawaki. And what he found is, and he's from Japan, and what he discovered is so amazing. He found, again, and this is related to the fat in our body. He said the fat in our body is literally like an organ. It literally is an organ, and that releases messengers and signals to our body. So, for example, there's one of the hormones released from the fat tissue and the fat cells in our body, and that's called adiponectin. And that adiponectin, what it does is it tells our liver and it tells our muscles, hey guys, we need to decrease inflammation, we need to burn fat, and we need to get more insulin into you, meaning the liver and the muscles. What happens though is that if we're exposed to too many toxins, then our fat cells can literally become inflamed, because another purpose of fat is actually it helps to store toxins so that it's not corrosive and not going out in the bloodstream and damaging our other organs as well. But what happens is when our fat cells get inflamed, they won't release as much of the adiponectin. So that's not that hormone that won't get to the liver and then to the muscles to help us burn fat and decrease inflammation and get insulin into the cells, which then affects our blood sugar and then causes again insulin resistance. And then on top of that, let's say the fat cells are even able to release that hormone adiponectin. If it's going to the liver and then to the also to the muscles, then those keyholes which are made for that particular hormone, adiponectin, they get grimied up because of, again, toxins and other things as well. So that hormone can latch on to those receptors in the liver and the muscles to tell those organs, hey guys, we need to decrease inflammation, we need to burn fat, we need to also get that insulin in there. So that is also a huge issue. So this shows us that we need healthy fat tissue, but just like Goldilocks, we need it in the right amounts, in the right places, so that it can do its job. But fat has its place and purpose in our body that is very healing to us as well. So it's just a matter of in the right amounts. So small, consistent habits are so important. Like, for example, I have a patient and she's in her 50s. And when she first came to see me, she said, oh, I want to, I'm trying, I can't get rid of the belly fat. I'm tired. I'm having all these sugar cravings. And when I ran blood work, I run very detailed lab work, we found out that her fasting insulin levels were really high. And so immediately, but I want to keep things at a, for that anyone can do and that are practical. So some things that anyone who's listening or watching can do is just increase the amount of protein with every meal. And in part two, I'm going to go into much more detail on that. But that's important to increase the amount of protein. And whether you're vegetarian or and eat meat, it doesn't even matter. But increasing the amount of protein is really, really important. And then also, again, going for those walks. She did that after lunch and after dinner, just about 10 to 15 minutes, and maybe a little longer after dinner. And then also, there's different things you can do like omega 3s to make the coat or the outside of your cell nice and healthy, a little bit of magnesium. And then I put on some other remedies, but keeping it again very simple. And then just within a short period of time, she lost the weight, she had more energy, she didn't have the sugar cravings, and also her fasting insulin levels, which were really high because of insulin resistance, came down back to normal. So, it can be simple, small steps, make a big difference. And the second thing is, I always say focus on nourishment, not deprivation. I
Yes.
don't even like to call it diets because even the word DIE in there. But we but we focus on nourishment, and this is what I like to tell people. It's like we're literally rebuilding your body from the cell level up. So think of that. So when we think of, wait a minute, I'm rebuilding my body and rebuilding all my little cells, there is that when we nourish our little cells and we nourish our organs, that's how we get our health. And so don't think of deprivation. Think, you know what? I'm going to add some from berries and raspberries and blueberries, and maybe I'll try this new fruit vegetable that I've never tried before, and make it a little bit colorful. And I am not a cook, so I just put everything in the Instapot. So you can make, recipes that are really simple but so nutritious. But focus on nourishment. When we think of nourishment, we'll be less inclined to eat processed foods. That's the key. And then 3 is restoring a daily rhythm, which is very, that can be a challenge with all of our lifestyles. And this is something I work on a daily basis myself. But one thing, what I mean by that is also just kind of taking time out for ourselves. And with whether it's a walk, doing maybe a minute or two of relaxing breathing, believe it or not, just by lowering our cortisol levels, our stress hormone levels, that's going to help bring down our insulin levels and also help make our cells more sensitive to the insulin just by taking time to unwind, which, in this day and age, it's now more important than ever. And then moving your body. As I said, if all of you just do one thing, remember, walk after your meals, but just a 5-minute walk, especially after lunch and definitely after dinner. Make sure, because I love this saying here, and I want to quote it right. They said, muscle is your best sugar sponge. And then strength training is important, and we'll get more into that into part 2, because the more you make your muscles stronger, that uses the sugar as well. So that's important. And again, natural detoxification, keeping it really simple. You can drink different herbal teas. There's dandelion tea, milk thistle tea, and then these cruciferous veggies. And there's so many things we can do. But just keep in mind that in this day and age, it's important to detoxify now more than ever. And you can even drink some lemon water in the morning with a little bit of maybe your local honey or Manuka honey. That's very powerful too. So all of these things, even though they seem very simple, they actually help your cells to repair and to regenerate. And that's the key, is to help your body regenerate. And
Well, you know what it sounds like, Dr. Chari? It's about self-care. It's about taking time for yourself, including your choices. Like, is this going to bring me energy or deplete my energy? Is this going to restore my well-being, or is it going to steal my peace? So I love that. It's all about self-care. And we are going to talk again. I can't wait to talk about protein and resistance training. I know that when I've increased my protein intake, it definitely has had a positive impact on the sugar cravings, not feeling as hungry, not having, food pangs outside of meal times. And so if you would like to feel your best, to look your best, to deal with this insulin resistance and all of the other things that it influences, watch this video again, share it with others, reach out to Dr. Chari if you would like a free consultation, and then I'll have a link for you in the description box. So we'll have you back, Dr. Chari, in a couple of weeks. And I'm so grateful to have you not only as a medical doctor, but as a friend. Oh, I want to share something with the audience. Dr. Chari and I have shared a meal. And let me just say, she has a wonderful, healthy appetite because I mean, it was wonderful. The food that we ate was natural, healthy. It was abundant. It was delicious. There was no deprivation. It was all about nourishment. And so she actually walks her talk, is the point that I'm making here. So thank you again, Dr. Chari. Friends, you know where to find me. thehealthyamerican.org. More importantly, get on my free Substack, peggyhall.substack.com. And let me share with you Dr. Chari's website. And this is where you can go to get started with your consultation and to see more information here. And that's at charicenter.com. Thank you again, Dr. Chari, and I look forward to seeing you in our next get together.
Thank you, Peggy.